Video conferencing is, more and more, becoming the way we meet. With so many more people meeting virtually, the workspace, as it's designed now, presents a problem.
Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us in our 30th Insights Live. Really appreciate you joining us. And firstly, I'm going to introduce myself, Nick Stedman, VP Marketing, and my co-host, Amanda J. And without further ado, our panelists. So first we have Meena Krenek from Perkins&Will, Interior Design Director. Also have Charmi Deepak, Global Real Estate Design and Construction Leader from Zendesk, and Jennifer Bryan, Leading Change Consultant from DigiWorks. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves to our panel. Great to see the numbers climbing here. Thank you so much for joining us. Meena, could you start and tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Oh, thank you, Nick. Yes, I'm thrilled to be here with these incredible, talented professionals beside me, and I think today's panel will be extremely interesting. My name is Meena Krenek. I'm an interior design director and principal with Perkins&Will. I reside and practice out of our Los Angeles studio. I also support the West Coast in all things interiors. So I've spent my majority of my career really focusing on the emotional connection that occupants have within the environments that we design for them. I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing brands, from Unilever to Red Bull to Oshkosh and Carter's Inc. to the Weather Channel to McKinsey & Company, just to say a few. And with all these companies, what we did was really dive deep into the psychology of design and really designing spaces that are influencing individuals in a deeper way. We dive a lot into what the real why is of why we're designing spaces. So I'm thrilled to be here with my colleagues to really start talking about what work is going to look like in the future.
Thank you, Meena. I very much look forward to you bringing that insight and experience into this panel today. Charmi, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nick. Very excited to be here, part of this panel today. I am Charmi Deepak, working at Zendesk, part of the real estate team, planning and executing their capital projects globally. I have built my career with the emphasis on design. I'm a licensed architect, and on the emphasis on sustainability. I'm happy to say that I was one of the first adopter of LEED certification, and I got my LEED certification in 2009. And since then, I have been part of various organizations, national and international, planning, executing their workplaces, their retail businesses, offices, whatnot. So I'm very happy to be here and discussing this topic today.
Excellent, very good. Very much ahead of the curve there on the sustainability side, I guess, then, which is going to be invaluable to this conversation. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, please tell us about yourself.
Yes, hello, everybody. It's fantastic to be here. And hello, it's a nearly all-female panel, which I think is the first time for me, certainly in this business. So that's fantastic to see all these exciting people here taking the lead in people-centric change, which is my bag. I have my own company called AB Change Consultancy, and that's been running for just over 10 years. I've worked for over 20 years in leading change, helping nearly 40 different organizations in this space. And it's really about taking a people-centric leading change perspective and approach in utilizing what I call the end person in mind. And what I mean by that, it's thinking about the person who's the furthest away from the change, whatever it is. From that standpoint, if we could think of them and think of their initial moment and make that positive, then there's a very high probability that everybody in between will have that initial moment be positive, which is really the first hurdle with change, because it tackles that change perception and the change emotions and fears and all that goes along with it. So that's really what I bring to the party from that standpoint. And yeah, I'm really excited to learn from you guys just as much as I can help anybody and be part of this. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. We're very glad you're on board with us and looking forward to what you bring to the table. Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm Amanda J, workplace strategist for Spacestor. And for any that don't know, Spacestor are the creators of workplace furniture, blending California cool and London design. I'm based just outside London, but work fairly closely with our US teams as well in Los Angeles and New York. A big thank you to our panelists joining us on this 30th episode. It's been very interesting watching this conversation evolve over the last couple of years. I think this time 2 years ago in April 2020, we were discussing whether returning to work within 6 weeks was realistic, and indeed whether work from home would be so popular that the workplace would become irrelevant. So whilst we still have quite a few unknowns to contend with, I think we're definitely in a much better place.
Very good. Thank you, Amanda. I'm Nick Stebbin, VP Marketing, responsible for global marketing rollout. In that role, see and talk to many of our clients and have seen the change in workspace strategy and the drivers influencing that over many years, and seen a huge change the last 5 years, but again, massively in the last 2.5 years. And yeah, as Amanda says, at one point we're looking at whether there would ever be a workplace again. I think we're learning to see how that workplace is very much relevant, very different, and that's what we want to talk about today. Message to all our panelists, again, thank you. Do participate. If you have a question, please pop it in the box and we will do our very best to answer that, weave that into the conversation. This isn't scripted, so we're pleased to discuss any questions you may have, and use the extensive experience of our panelists here today. Take advantage of what they know. So let's begin without further ado. The subject of the session is designing sustainability through continual change. Now, that title might appear a bit of a paradox. We work with designers of global workspaces all around the globe, and we see a number of challenges coming out. One of those is the uncertainty of the future. You know, the 10-year lease is gone, the 5-year lease is gone. We hardly know what we're designing for in a few weeks, let alone years. And so we're seeing the need for change to be incorporated into workspace design. Yet at the same time, there's another influence out there, another force, and that's the need for sustainability, to design for the future. And they might seem two opposing forces or requirements: the need to design ahead, but also the need to recognize that things are changing almost on a daily basis. So how do those two work together? And this is what I want to talk about today. I think it's an excellent opportunity to discuss these with the experts out there. So I'm going to start with a question to you, Meena. Do you see both of these needs at play with your clients? And how are you helping them to achieve that?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think that's a really interesting question. And I think that all of us, none of us have a crystal ball of what the future will hold. We also are in a very pivotal point. All of us on this call can influence what the new work can look like, right? And so we've been spending a lot of times with our clients doing workshops and exercises based on what does the hybrid model look like for their organization? And I think for the very first time, clients are looking at people, place, and technology all at the same time, which is really wonderful. They're also thinking about, they're putting the mirror up and they're not saying, I'm going to be like another consumer goods company or a tech company. I'm going to see what my specific curated business needs are going to be implemented within the space. And what does that mean in relation to what was existing in their space to what they need today? And I think these kind of conversations have been, it never has been one size fits all, but it's this idea that our clients are really seeking a deeper level of curation, a deeper level of purpose, that we know a lot of our knowledge workers can get a lot of focus work done at home. So what is the unique offering that the new workplace can provide that will encourage people to come in and use the space and really feel connected to the space? So to answer your question on the dialect of like these two autonomies that we're dealing with, I think it really has to do with thinking about, at the end of the day, the people that we're designing for. We're really going very deep on work styles. How do people work, so that we're truly curating space that is needed and is desired. And by doing simple pilot programs, this allows different organizations to test it so they know that it will be in use. And so I think there's a lot of conversation about how much real estate folks need at this time. And I think having these deep workshops and really understanding where they want to take their business is still allowing us to create North Stars for for the companies that we get to work with. So to answer your question, I do think there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of risks, and people are nervous to do things, but I think it's our job as design influencers to be able to guide our clients in ways that allow them to think about things that can be multi-purpose. That's been a big push in our industry as well. Like, how can a room or a space have so many purposes so that it's one thing during the day and a different thing at night for the employees that work there? But just a few things that have been on our mind, but I definitely think giving our clients this kind of awareness that we understand the position they're in and we're able to kind of help them curate what this new work will look like.
Yeah, excellent, very interesting. And I like the point about what you're saying, that people are asking not how can I have an office like Google, and we were seeing that a lot a few years ago, but there's now a greater awareness that we need to provide for our workforce in a way that's unique to them and unique to my organization. And really it's, how do I do that, rather than how can I be like Google, which is very interesting. I'm going to come back to you on that a bit later, but firstly I want to hear what Charmi has to say on that and the needs, and perhaps any recognition of that conflicting driver between sustainability and the need to design for change.
Yeah, I think they can coexist. So that's a good news, right?
Excellent.
I think there is a change in perception, and what we are seeing here is focus from places to people. I think that's everybody has learned from last 2 years that places are important, but let's not focus on what they look like, what they do, but how they serve the people. And I think it's a good change. Slowly but slowly we're getting there, and that focus on people is also driven by sustainability, health and wellness, diversity, inclusions. All of these aspects are needed to built into your environment now for all of us to be successful, happy, and utilize this offices of future of work as our extended space of work versus just the place of work. So as we all agree, work can happen anywhere. It's what purpose-driven work we are going to do in specifically business-provided office spaces. I think that's how I see it. I definitely think they both are important and they can coexist. It's just how we plan. And I think what Meena said, nobody has a crystal ball, but if we know, what we know is a human nature, human history, how we perform, how we work. and what impacts us. Environment has a huge impact on us. So do the spaces. So I feel like it's shifting that focus from places to people will be the driving force going forward.
Yeah, very interesting. So is it fair as a follow-up question to say it's more about how does a space work, or how does a piece of furniture work, is more important than what does it look like? Yeah.
Yes, aesthetics always important. However, is it serving its purpose? It's where I'm trying to do. We all did the certain spaces that look cool and good, but if we do the data studies and kind of find out whether, does that high top table or a bar high table, serving its purpose? For example, is it functioning as we thought it would function? And when we do the sensor data and kind of collect some information, so human behavior tells you, like, people will sit on the two sides of the corner of the table, even though it meant to communally engage each other. But it depends on what space of frame or mind you are when you come to work. Now I think we are in luck in some sense that designing is going to be a little easier. The reason why I say it is now we know that everyone is coming to the office to meet each other, collaborate, create or innovate. So that purpose has been narrowed down from, there was a wide variety. We do everything that we do, focus, we do this, we do that. Like now it's narrowed down in some sense. So it should be easier for us to focus on those spaces and get best out of those spaces. Of course, to Meena's point, agility and flexibility is important, and multi-purpose spaces are going to be helpful for the real estate decision making. But I just think that we are in a unique, exciting space right now where we can make those changes. And I think it's going to be more streamlined in the next couple of years. I think right now is a pause phase. I would say people are afraid to make decisions, but you will see that changing pretty soon.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll come back to you about where that confidence will come from to move up. That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Jennifer, so expert in change. How do you help your clients make these changes that both Meena and Charmi have been talking about?
Well, it's in multiple different ways. There isn't a one size fits all for anybody from that standpoint. And Meena and Charmi have talked about the whole diversity and inclusion and bringing all of that into play, but to create that resilience, to create that sustainability from a business perspective, it's much more about asking, what is it that we want? So as an organization, as business leaders, what do we want our organization to be? And I don't mean just now, I mean in 10 years from now. And the reason why I say that, there is a McKinsey report that states that in 5 years, in 2027, 75% of the current companies listed on the S&P will no longer exist. That's a really startling statistic. And so I think it really requires business leaders to wake up and say they either have got to change and adapt, or they're going to die. They will no longer exist. And so as a result, we need to ask, what is it that we want to be as an organization? How do we want to be thought of? How do we want to be perceived? How do we want people to think of us? How do we want our people to feel and think about us and working with us and to build the organization? Because one thing that we have really, that loads of statistics and surveys have all been done by a whole host of different people, is that a lot of people feel disconnected from the organization in which they work in. We've lost a bit of that sense of community. Now, we can have that in the digital space. That is very feasible, and a lot of companies have managed to make that. But those that haven't are really struggling as a result of that. And it's not just about the office, it's about the culture of the organization as well. And when we're looking at the workspaces is the environment in which we work in, and that's the digital environment as well as the real environment. and all of that that is in between. And we need to be looking at, so the first step is deciding what do we want as an organization, and then it's taking a look at how does that meet up with what we need as well, and then we can start to make the decisions on where we need to make the investments going forward based on all of that. So that's really the first kind of initial steps. But as a result, there's not a one answer, because every organization is going to have a different answer to those couple of questions. And it's about working through all of that in order for them to build what's going to be the right solution, the right fit.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So what you're saying really is that these objectives are extremely important, because if you don't get them right, then you'll fail. And and knowing where you're going. And I think that ties in with something we've been talking about a lot here, and recognizing that many global companies, increasingly so, are publishing and working towards a corporate and social responsibility goal, and all that encompasses. And we were having this discussion yesterday around sustainability, and sustainability isn't just about the environment. There are other aspects to sustainability, which I think it was you mentioning this yesterday, Meena. This it's not just the environment; it's the whole well-being, the social impact as well. What are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, Nick, I was just going to say that, I mean, I think we talk about sustainability and our minds automatically go to environmental, and social issues. And I think really when it comes down to creating spaces that feel healthy, I think there's been a mindset shift on and what that looks like in the future, right? We've just gone through something in the last 2.5 years, and the mental health concerns that we are not even seeing at this point. But human resources at most of these companies are at the table. They have a different mindset on how they're managing their employees, and I think that's an interesting point of view to talk about, because as designers, we're able to affect the behaviors that we're creating within these environments, and really thinking about mindfulness, thinking about spaces for respite, for people to get away, spaces that people have been in isolation and comfort, their own home, their sanctuary. So how do we create environments that are hosting the employee, that they're feeling like when they're coming into the office, the offering that employee is providing is very hospitable. I talk a lot about workspatality, right? So what is this new perspective that people are having about coming into a healthy environment, and that affects mental health as well as how you feel in a space? Imagine the natural light that folks have advantage of, the fact that how the air flows in the space. I mean, there's so much of the infrastructure that has to be seamless, but also has to be there. And if it's a little bit off, people realize it now. And I think that consciousness about their environment, we've been talking a lot about circadian lighting in some of our projects. So how do we create environments within the space that tie directly to the exterior of the environment as well? So I think this greater consciousness of health and well-being and mindfulness and spaces that really support our headspace seem to be, at the forefront. And what does that mean in a future where we've been, on Zoom calls and team calls for so many months that we've been seeing people two-dimensionally, and now we have the opportunity to come together again. And so the expectation of coming to the office right at this point for a lot of companies feel like collaborative environments for socialization. I can get my focus work done elsewhere. Why am I coming in? I'm coming to connect with my colleagues. I'm coming in to collaborate. Or I have a fantastic Zoom room with really great lighting and speakers, so I can take a really great call at the office because the technology is seamless and really focused on my work style. So I think there's this greater conversation about, individuals, work styles, health and wellness, and mindfulness that falls under sustainability, that it's not a contradiction of all the things that we've done in the past for sustainability, but it really has another emphasis once again on the occupants that Jennifer and Charmi were talking about. So I think that's something that's just, it's in every conversation that we've been having with clients.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, the deeper levels to sustainability. And I think that's very interesting. Your comment about people have curated their own workspace around them at home. They have got it as they like it. And so to come back to the workspace, it's got to be the same or better than at home to persuade them to come in, go through the pain of the commute and so on. And I think that kind of this interesting question has popped up from Lydia here. Pardon me, I'll address this one back to you again, Meena, but do you have a client who doesn't realize the importance of this, as Jennifer was saying, who's not quite there yet in terms of what they need to do for their staff, and care more about the looks than the why we're doing it, and how do you handle that?
Well, at the time I don't. I'm very fortunate. We have a series of clients at Perkins&Will that are just curious and empathetic and trying to figure out what to do for their employees. So I feel very fortunate to say that. But we have in the past had clients that are like that, right? And so what we try to do is, I always like to use the Art Gensler point of view here. We like to stretch the rubber band, right? So once you get to know a client, I always talk about it like it's dating, right? You can see how deep you can go with that client. And I think if we do the things that we're talking about, Jennifer mentioned it as well, is like, if we dive deep into finding their why and making them feel like the most unique organization in the world, I think they connect with us. I mean, we have their best interest at heart in trying to find their kind of North Star for the work. So I feel like there's always, I think most clients want their organization to feel unique, have a differentiator, to be special, to be the best place for people to work at. So I think generally that's deep down inside, even if they don't say it. I think that's a big part of what we do at Perkins&Will is like a client will come with us with a question or concern or something they need our support on. And it usually isn't that. Usually it's something totally different. And we get to go fishing and find out what that is and make it something different for them.
Yeah, fascinating, interesting. Thank you. Jennifer, you want to chip in there? I'll come back.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is what Meena was saying, it's deep diving into their why, because one thing we need to make sure is that we're not assuming that everybody has a great workspace at home, because not everybody does. And that varies across the different spectrum and so forth. And so it's really understanding what the drive is for people and individuals. And when we're looking at sustainability, there's 17 UN sustainability goals, so it's a whole host of different areas that we need to be looking at and incorporating. And yes, there's the environment. Yes, there's the E&I, but there's also, as Meena was saying, that health and well-being. There is looking at the our supply chains and what that means and where that's coming from, and all of those different guises and elements. And people are really excited. They're motivated about that. It's something that people have got really passionate about. Certainly here in the UK, when we had the COP26 back in November, everybody was just buzzing and going, what can we do? What can we do? What else can we do? What more can we do? Now that the energy prices have skyrocketed, people are really focused on what can we do now, because otherwise we've got bigger problems on our hands. So there's a lot in that space. And I think the more we can tap into that and really understand the root cause and what's really going on, the better equipped we will be, and the higher probability we'll be able to create sustainability as an organization.
Yeah, they're very interesting. So any of our audience listening now, I think it's a very key point that's been made over the last few contributions there. Understand your why, where you're going, what's best for you, and you might need somebody to help you. Thank you. I'm going to come to you, Charmi, because I think, well, I am, and I think our audience are very keen to know what you're doing at Zendesk to meet these needs here.
A lot.
Yeah.
So sustainability, I'll just focus on, since we kind of ended there with Jennifer, the sustainability is very important. And the way I review sustainability is as kind of like a wake-up call from COVID. Now it's no longer an abstract threat in the future it's here in your face, and health is so important. I think that's what I take out from this 2 years experience. And I think a lot of employees, a lot of people are realizing that now, and thus they focus on it. And that's opportunity for all of us who believe in this cause to take it, further from where we've been thinking about it, we've been planning it, but there hasn't been that, push and a drive. And it's really great to see that push and a drive is coming from the investors, coming from the business. It's no longer an option. It's a necessity. Here at Zendesk, we have pledged that all of our offices are going to be carbon negative in 2021. On top of that, we are ready to launch a program which is for embodied carbon. So that's operational carbon. We are 100%, pledging to be 100% negative. And then there is an embodied carbon, which we all know, when we're doing the build constructions, 28% is operational carbon, but 11% or so comes from the embodied carbon on how the materials are extracted and that whole life cycle of those materials from where they origin and to get to your office. So I think that 11% is where we think there is a lot of more work to be done. So we are launching procurement, the sustainable procurement program for our construction materials, which is great. Health and wellness is important. So most of our offices or new locations are going to be well-certified buildings, which is huge for everybody. And as many of us know, wellness focuses on this holistic approach. It's not just the environment, it's, your food and beverage offerings, it's your thermal comfort, it's your acoustic requirements, your ear gets sensitive, it's your eyesight, lighting sensitivity and cardiac lighting, daylighting needs. So it just gives that environment for human body to function and do the best of our work that we need to do. So we are focusing on that. And then I feel like this diversity and inclusions is very important for us in a sense that we are not only creating an environment for one person, it's creating an environment for different kind of persons who are coming from different kind of home settings and home work environments, different cultures, and how can we bridge that gap between home and the office through the conscious decision making. That's where we are at right now, and trying to plan out something. For example, we are creating this indoor gardens which promotes the good oxygen, gets rid of the carbon, it reduces the stress. As if you have a very stressful meeting in a conference room, get out and step outside in the garden, 5 minutes, you'll see the change. And nature has a wonderful things that it does on you. So I feel like it's a lot of things are changing. Again, I am very excited that, in the next 3 years, we'll see a real impactful changes in most of the office and work environments.
Very interesting. Thank you. What you said something there about that indoor garden, that partly answers a question here from just come in via LinkedIn Live. How are you seeing amenity spaces changing? So are we moving away? What sort of wow factors are we incorporating? Moving away from ping pong and free beer and so on. What I guess is a deeper level of these wow spaces which really support the well-being of people. Can you tell us any more what you're doing at Zendesk there?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, let's not take away the beer. It's important. But provide an environment which is not just, hi-fi. Celebration is important. You're coming, meeting your, colleagues. Let's provide a celebratory spaces. So those are those wow spaces I can classify. But at the same time, you have a mental peace. I think headspace is very important right now. Focus on headspace. So along with this indoor gardens, we are also creating the environments which are wellness rooms. A quiet room, a library where you are just hiding yourself. Sometimes you don't want to be visible. And we understand that, you have a meeting or two that you do, but then you want to go hide, focus, do some things. We're creating library spaces, which are very geared towards those introverts, individual folks who would come into the office, meet what they need to do, but also provide them their sanctuary kind of sort of way. Wellness rooms are important, prayer rooms are important. So I think some of those, thoughtful spaces are what we are planning, apart from the wow spaces.
Oh yeah, very interesting. I love that term, celebratory spaces. That's good. Yeah. Amanda, do chip in.
Yeah, I was going to jump in on that point. Charmi reminds me of what we were discussing yesterday. Jennifer, the other part of all this change is ensuring employees are brought on the journey, isn't it? We were discussing kind of continuous testing, or the pilot spaces that people have been experimenting with, which is a great way to try things out. But there's been a lot of change for people, hasn't there? People have been through a lot in the last 2 years, and we're still figuring out what shape the future will take. Jennifer, I know you've written a book on leading people in change. Can you give us some teasers from that?
Sure. So, I mean, it's very much about understanding what it is that people want, and really getting to the crux of that from an organization. I mean, if it depends on the perspective from which we take this from. If we're looking at it as business leaders, we need to make the decisions about our organization so we can make the right investments. If we're looking at it from a people's and teams arena, then it's very much about understanding what is it that I need to get the work done, and what is that all about, and which is a lot about what Charmi was just talking about. Sometimes we do come into the office to try and meet up with colleagues, but sometimes we just need to come to the office because that's where we can be the most productive. And it's really understanding that. But one thing I found really startling, just share with you, I keep my social media very separate. I have the ones I use for business and the ones I use for business, and I don't mix the two. And the one that was a personal one, it came from an old school friend, and she's not in the corporate real estate space at all whatsoever. In fact, she's in marketing and events. And she posted on her social media all these pictures. Look at the fabulous new office and all the fabulous spaces. And I looked at that, and I'm coming in with a little bit of a CRE hat on, and I'm going, isn't it fascinating that all the pictures she took were of all the collaboration spaces, all those, as one of the audience members said, the wow factors, that she took pictures of the garden, she took pictures of the outdoor informal chat spaces, the indoor where they had this fantastic like sky bar, it looked like, kind of thing, and all of those particular, no one took a picture at the desk, which I thought, and it made me sit there and pause, go, there is that element, that is what, we are really looking for. We are looking for a bit of a wow. I went into a new client office, what's today, Wednesday, so Monday, and it was really dark, but they said, we've got to have it dark because the work that they do is very technical on the screens, and they've got to see really finite detail. So they have to see everything. They can't have sun glares and all the rest of it. Yet there was still a lot of other spaces for them to go to, and there's swings, and there is the beer fridge, and there is the tea and coffee, and there's the fridge that has all the soft drinks in the world, and all the rest of it. And it just makes it's about making it a space where people feel comfortable to be themselves. It's about making them feel as if they can just be them and not apologize for it, in the sense of, if they feel they need to go somewhere and find a space on their own, it's there and they can go do it. If they want to go and chat with all the people, they can go and do that. If they want to just zone out and take some reflection time and just listen to some music and sit there and swing in a space, they can do that. And I think that is what is really important when we're looking at the wow factors or the different spaces and the change. It's about letting people be and all that means. And in regards to then leading change and the managers, I think the hardest bit, and it is not going to be easy because it's a different skill set, is figuring out how to manage people and to help them, give them the support so that they can be who they want to be in all of these guises. Because if we are in a hybrid arena and we only have this space to see a person, there's a lot that the person can hide and we won't pick up on. And so it's that much harder to really take notice of all of these things, to really make sure that people are listened to and they have the permission, which is a big one. They have the permission to just do what they need to do. And a lot of managers, when we ask people the question, oh, how are you? Notice how long then it takes for them to pause before they just start to answer the question for you, or they start to answer the question for themselves. It's about pausing and just waiting for that answer and let it come so that people feel they have the permission to say what needs to be said and do and be what needs to be done.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Thank you. It's a very full answer there. I'll respond to the first point. Anyway, there was a concept early on, wasn't there, during lockdown, where there's a lot of talk of people going back to the office for collaboration and collaboration only. Why would you stay at home, or why would you go into the office rather to do your emails and such like? But I think it was fairly quickly proved that work isn't like that. Work is fluid, especially perhaps for more junior staff who don't have that much control over their workday, and we need that range of settings. And I guess what we're mainly hearing from that answer is choice, isn't it? It's choice, it's autonomy over the spaces I need to do the best work at the time I choose.
Yeah, exactly that. It's, I think we have a tendency when it comes to change to sometimes make things more complicated than they need to be. At the same time, we sometimes don't take into account what actually needs to happen. And what I mean by that is that we need to just allow people to take on board where they're going, give them those permissions, let them just gel along with it, and rather than feeling as if we've got to be the gurus of all information and actually have all the answers, because we really don't need to have all the answers right now. We just need to enable others to figure it out, have that test and learn. Let's experiment, open up the doors and go, you know what? We don't know the answers, and that's okay. Let's try it out. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We'll just do something different next time. So there's elements of that I think we've lost that a bit. We always felt like we've got to have the solution, and we don't, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's partly, I think a lot of respect has been gained, certainly for employers who have been able to say, look, we're running this experimentation. We don't necessarily know all the answers. We're putting our hands up and come on a journey with us. You can input to this, and we're having a test and learn space on this floor, and come and help us out.
Yeah, exactly.
Be part of the journey. Yeah, and on that subject of experimentation, is this something you're working with on your clients, Meena?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that were interesting while Charmi and Jennifer were speaking is that, we had this question about the wow factor, right? And I think that, just in relation to where we've been and where people's headspaces and in general, like creating an environment that people want to come back to, it really is about this idea of just pure inspiration and that you feel a part of the organization. And I think we touched on this idea of virtual culture and physical culture, right? And so I think this idea of really making spaces that are uniquely about that organization or that place is so important. And it's more than just branding. It's much more of like a connection, the emotional connection that we're trying to draw from, right? It's the way people are behaving in that space because it's designed a certain way. And so I do want to emphasize this idea of inspiration, because that it's a big part of why people come back again the next day. You know, they were inspired in that space. Something magical happened in that space. They were collaborating and socializing in a unique way. You know, there's things that encourage people to come back, and inspiration and education are one of the two factors that are really important to kind of creating these environments that make people want to come and keep on coming back. And there's definitely been like a switch in outcome-based work. You know, this idea that Jennifer touched on with psychological safety and trust that, you know, has been built through, you know, working in this kind of virtual model, right? We get to meet people's partners. We see their cat running across the keyboard. We get to know people in a deeper way, and that's not forgotten. And I think when people come back to the office, there are some people that are comfortable with that level of blurring the lines between business and personal life. And that actually has made a lot of the individuals in the workplace, the majority of the individuals in the workplace today, feel connected to organizations because they get them. They understand them. It's amazing how much people get excited about wearing swag from an organization, right? I'm a part of something greater than myself. And that hasn't changed. That was a pre-COVID thought, and bringing your whole self to work. All of that is the same, but it still ties true to where people are today. So I think this idea of making sure that these offerings and these kind of unique points of view, I mean, work's not going to look the same. You know, the example that Jennifer shared with the individual taking pictures of everything but not a desk. You know, I have a joke that like, I'm really convinced that open office is evolving and it's not going to look the same way, right? We had all this conversation about neighborhoods and open office, and like, it definitely will not look the same that it looked in 2019. So I have to just like reiterate that fact of just really thinking about spaces that are, you know, about individual work styles, that are about this idea of inspiring, connecting to the brand or the organization that people are a part of. And then just really thinking about what makes people feel good and connected. I think that's the psychology and the environment. Charmi talked about the gardens, right? Where are those respite spaces? So you have the balance of virtual and analog all together, right? And that makes people have the ability to decide one or the other. The last point I want to talk about is with hybrid model is that, you know, there's going to be people that are remote and there's going to be people that are in the office, and making sure as organizations do this mindfully, that make sure that people, regardless of where they are, and that this virtual culture that they're building, to make sure people feel connected to one another. And it's hard when you're doing it across the screen. But I think, you know, we at Perkins&Will have been designing a lot of rooms that are curated with that level of technology, the level of speakers, the way an individual looks, the lighting, and so that people feel like they're coming across a screen a certain way with the same amount of energy. So I think we just need to continue to be cognizant of what that hybrid model looks like for people, so that that level of inclusivity and equity is there regardless of where we're working from.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Meena, as well. But I think we also, though, can't lose sight of the fact that not everybody had their teams all in one place. You know, before COVID, a lot of people had global teams before, and teams just in loads of different spaces, whether it was across from San Fran to New York to Houston, or Shanghai to Singapore to London. You know, lots of people had very international teams. I think the difference is now that that even though it was international, there were people that they would see regularly. And if someone noticed something in the office, so they're in the Shanghai office and they happen to see Kim there, and they're going, I think something might not be right for Kim. It may be that person then contacts you and said, you know what, Kim, something's going on. You might want to reach out to Kim. You know, we don't necessarily have that anymore. And I think that's something we need to build, that network in some way, shape, or form in this hybrid space.
Mm. There's some really, really valuable points made there. Thank you both for those. I think one other aspect of getting back to the office, I mean, personally, I like working from home sometimes. One of the key differences is you're with like-minded people who are thinking the same way as you, got the same goals, similar goals, they're aligned. And that's you're just part of something bigger in a space which understands the same objectives that you've got. And this phrase hybrid is coming up a lot, and we see this a lot from our clients, that the need to nail and get this hybrid space working right. There's another phrase which came across the other day, which is the distillation of space. So many companies are changing their space. They're scaling down. They don't need so many desks and tables and chairs as they did before. But what they need is smaller, richer spaces that really, really meet the needs of their own organization. Does that resonate with you, Charmi?
Absolutely. It's no longer the sea of desks that we are used to see. The office is going to look very different. And the purpose is changing, you know, in the hybrid and remote and flexible. There are a lot of terminologies that we are using nowadays. In my mind, it's more flexible work environment. You choose where you want to work. Is going to win in a long run, right? It's because we are emphasizing more flexibility on it, but not everybody can do it. If you are a lab worker, you do need to come into the office and do those physical aspects as well. Since the intent of the office is changing, it's more purpose driven. Of course, the scale and size of it's changing for sure. The planning principle are changing as well from the occupancy planning principles, because it's hard to predict. You know, earlier it was a linear planning principles, like, you know, you have 100 employees, you have so much square feet per employees, and now this is the size of office you need, because we had all figured it out for, like, you know, a majority of 10 years. Now we are moving from assigned desk from one-to-one to an totally open agile seating, where you will have to book a desk if you're coming into the office. And it's going to be much smaller number of desks, more of this, you know, collaboration and, you know, spaces. I think we are trending right now at about 30%, 40, 60% is more collaboration spaces. 30 to 40% is where we're going to have those focus spaces. So we like to call it like a desk, because desks are meant to, you know, ergonomically meant to do your best work. Like, even though you love to sit on the couch, imagine yourself sitting in the, you know, nice lounge couch for 4 hours, you know, you're going to suffer. So I think that it's much, numbers are smaller, but it's still there, because that does provide you the best working environment in a longer duration. I think they were meant to do 8 hours of work, but I think, you know, if you go one hour beyond, you're not comfortable in any other agile seating, right? You will kind of change and shift versus the desk. But to answer your question, it's much smaller now, because the ratios are changing. It's much harder to predict exact size. So we will have to run it as a, you know, hospitality concept. You know, if you're trying to book a hotel, rooms are booked, you book the next day. And that's where we are trying to figure out, like, you know, let's come up with a model that is sustainable. And then let's say if we are exceeding the need of the space, rather than being reactive, we will work to plan it, you know, with our teams, and have the team decide, okay, if you want to come in as a team of 50 people in the office, you better book it in advance, because now it's a different model. Don't expect that workspace will be there all of a sudden. So I think it will take a little learning and planning, but I think you know, I think Meena had a term, workspitality.
Yeah,
workspitality. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's what's going to be. It's an office which will be more like a hospitality environment. Either it's a restaurants or hotels. Like, it's much smaller, but much more, planning needed to come in, because it is purposeful, and you better know when you're going to the office what you're going to do there, right? Or you can just come and park. That's also there. But however, if you are coming in and spending that hour of commute, in your mind, why are you going there?
Yeah.
I think the other thing to bear in mind is, though, that, hybrid working isn't a huge leap from agile working, and in EMEA particularly, no one had a one-on-one desk ratio really that I'm aware of. Certainly in the last 10 years, or in allocated desks, they would be, team spaces or shared spaces, or whatever the organization decided to call it. But I think you're 1,000% correct, Charmi, is that it's much more about the ratios have changed, and hence the needs have changed slightly. And I think in order to help with that, if businesses also do what's called scenario planning, where they can create a matrix of scenarios based on the different extremes of where they're at as an organization. They can create 4 different potential scenarios that then they could start to test and experiment and learn from, and see what's going to actually drive the vision that they are trying to create in 10 years time. And that because we don't have a crystal ball, and we're never going to have a crystal ball. But one thing is certain is that uncertainty and complexity are going to increase. Things have never I want to get her name right. April Rinne, I think it is. Yeah, April Rinne wrote this book called Flux. And she said in it, which was a big for me, is that, right now, the level of complexity and uncertainty is in the level of change is at its highest it's ever been. It's also at the slowest it's ever going to be. And so, that's something we've got to start to grapple with.
Absolutely. I think change is the only constant here. That's what I get out of it. But yes.
Very, very, very interesting conversation. We're running short to time now, and we've got a couple of minutes left. I've just got one question. It's a bit of a change in gear here, but I had a question with regard to scent or smell in the office. Smell being often described as one of the forgotten scents. With the focus on well-being and the need to make sure that the needs of our people are fully met, do you ever have a requirement or need to get or curate the smell experience in a workspace? Now, I don't mind who answers this one, if anyone's got a view or some experience on it, but I thought it was an interesting question. I'll chuck it in. We've got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I think sensory components within the space, which could be, with scent or with sound, is what makes spaces quite memorable. And when you can dual up on your sensory components, meaning the scent, the sound, and the visual, and all together, those are the things that make an imprint on individuals and are those aspects of inspiration, or that aspect of wow. So we're working with a tenant right now. They're rethinking it's a workplace building, and they're rethinking about signature amenities and what are the amenities of the future that people are going to be seeking. And one of the conversations was all about what is the scent of the space. And I think that ties back to what Charmi was saying about workspitality and hospitality. It's a whole different level of curation that I think it is important to think of all of those sensory components. And, even with immersive technology and then things that are analog, people need that kind of balance of their sensory components as well. So I think those are the things that are going to be unique offerings. I think also thinking about, natural smells. I mean, we're working on a workplace design where it's indoor, outdoor working environments. And, the idea that lavender was going to be designed around the area to create this level of soothing comfort for the individuals. So I think all of those, I think more so than ever, sensory design and experiential design is been elevated. So I would definitely say, Nick, that smell has a big part to do with what the future of environments can be.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, Meena. Charmi, final words on that or anything else? We're up to time now, so we need to close very soon.
Yeah, Sense has been part of the brands for a long time. Once I designed a bank, and they had this particular proprietary scent that we were installing in every bank. They wanted people to remember wherever they go that's that, and it's unconscious, feeling that you create by scent. And I think it has a lot of potential in a workplace. Like if you put a pizza smell, people will come. I don't know, but just a good light thought. I think it has a potential and something to be explored. I think it might be, finding that right smell, because, everybody is different. And if you're catering towards diversity and inclusion, it might offend somebody, it might make somebody happy. So I think that's where it's not been explored so much in the workplaces yet. But it's definitely a subject that to be, tackle on. And I think it has a lot more potential on how it makes you feel.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jennifer, give you the last 10 seconds.
Smell. I have nothing to say on that. I have no idea how to, besides going, you might want to fix that. I have no idea.
No, thank you. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. And thank you so much to our panelists, Meena, Charmi, and Jennifer. Really, really appreciated the benefit of your experience and what you contributed. Thank you to all our panelists. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our audience, I mean to say. Really, really appreciate it. We'll call it a day there. Thank you. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but do join us for our next one, and chip in there and we'll try and address it. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Cheerio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.